Welcome again to another edition of Studio Steve. We're going into episode 8 today. This is very exciting for me. I have a good friend on the show today who is a man who constantly is working. As long as I've ever known him, he's always doing something. He's always working on something. He's always trying to get better. He's always trying to sharpen his craft. And so it's great to have people like that are kind of around you and you're following them and watching their progress and their growth, because it really just motivates you to want to do better in whatever you're doing as well. So the guest I have on today wears many hats. He is not only the president of the Canadian Culinary Federation, the Victoria chapter, he's also the sous chef at the Government House here in Victoria, BC, and he's also the owner-operator of Island Chef Pepper Company as well, which is a company that he started up, which specializes in hot sauces, jellies, seasonings, and actually he's working on some really great stuff for the Christmas gift season as well with some packages. We'll get into all of that in just a second. I do want to welcome to the show Vincent Capitano.
Hey Steve, how's it going?
Great, man. How are you doing?
Good, good. It's Sunday night, 9:30. Sun's asleep, hopefully for the rest of the night. So
Yeah,
doing good.
I'm in the same boat. This is why I have to do these so late.
I respect it. I respect it.
So I want to get right into what you're doing with your company, because this is something that I think has been in the last year or so that's really taken off. And I know that you've been really active in all the public markets in Victoria. You're at the Machosen market this afternoon, in fact. How did this all come to be? Like, how did this even begin? What caused this sort of idea for you to start this business up?
So it all started with the Culinary Federation. So as you mentioned, I am the president of the Victoria branch, and we were trying to figure out new venues to be able to raise money for scholarships at Camosun College, feeding the homeless, mustard seed events, paying for the workshops that we were putting on in order to better the training of our young cooks and basically anybody who wants to learn a little more. So I started making hot sauce to sell. It became really popular, and I thought to myself, well, why not go big stream with it? So I started working with recipes, making more, found a great graphics designer, and launched the company on May 15th of this year in the middle of the pandemic. And we've been going strong. I can't believe it's November already.
That's awesome. I think if my memory serves me correct, I remember doing a function at Camosun College, and you had been either gifted or provided a bunch of peppers from someone. And when you were at Government House, and you decided to turn those peppers into a batch of hot sauce, and it was just you on a whim, just trying to do something with these peppers. Was that kind of like the inertia that helped start the idea of, hey, maybe I should make hot sauce?
So it was actually from First We Feast's Hot Ones. So that for those who don't know, that is a YouTube show where the host Sean Evans interviews a celebrity or whoever, and they answer questions and eat gradually more spicy hot wings. And I thought to myself, I'd like to do that. See how far I could go in the lineup. But as a chef, I decided to make our own hot sauce, and we paired it up with our dish at Brewery and the Beast at Government House. So we got a whole bunch of peppers in, made all those hot sauces, and that was kind of my first take at hot sauce, and it was quite astonishing. Apparently, and I say apparently because I never believe people outright, but I got 10 out of 10 hot sauces tasted amazing. So I was like, had to be a
Wow.
fluke. But then when we went to Brewery and the Beast, um, and we were there, we served about 700 people, and probably 500 or 600 asked if we sold it, which was kind of like another thing in the back of my mind is like, oh, people are really enjoying these hot sauces. That's crazy. I've never made hot sauce before, and all of these people really like my hot sauce. And it kind of that was sort of the snowball that just started trickling down the hill, and then here we are about 2 years later.
So that was about 2 years ago when this first actually happened?
Yeah, that was about 2 years ago. Was the first time I made hot sauce.
Wow. What was what did was there? Do you remember like what recipe you looked at, or what book, or did you just like do it on a whim or ask somebody?
So I know a lot about fermentation.
Mm,
And it was just essentially my skills as a chef, knowing about fermentation and flavor pairing. So there was no recipes, there was no guidance. It was I went and looked at the ingredients lists for all of the hot sauces on the current season, and then I created the recipes based on that. And I fermented the peppers. If there was one resource I might be able to quote, but it would just be Noma's Guide to Fermentation. But it
mm.
wasn't specifically for hot sauce. That's just where I got some of my more key fermentation notes that I use every day with work.
So I know fermentation became a big thing in the Victoria culinary scene in the last few years. Is that sort of when this came to light for you, or was it something you were always looking into?
This is something that I'm always looking into. I like to think of myself as a chef who is like I delve into classics, but I like to do modern twists on it. So I always love going back to what's old is now new. Um, and so when it comes to fermentation, with my bread making, I have a sourdough starter that's over a century old.
Wow.
When I do my cheese making, I do the old fashioned cheese making. So nowadays there's freeze dried cultures. They're very specific. You add that one culture in, you throw it in, and then that's how you make the cheese. Back in the day, it's just raw milk cultures that you leave on the counter, and it has all of the cultures from all of the like hundreds of freeze dried cultures all in that one batch. So you just chuck that into it, and then you can make any cheese out of one culture. So that's how I make my cheese. Because if you even when you make these freeze dried cheese cultures, you add in maybe one that makes cheddar, and for the first 3 days, that is the one culture that's in there. And then by 6 months, when you're cutting into it, you have all 100 cheese cultures in there. That where did they come from? They're just naturally occurring everywhere. They're in the milk. They're there already. Um, so this idea of raw milk cheese making or the traditional cheese making is it's quite interesting. So it also has to do with fermentation. So I actually on my counter right now I have my sourdough culture, my kefir culture, and
Okay.
my raw milk culture all going.
Is that something? Because I've actually taken a cheese making class with you, or uh, put on by you,
Yeah,
at Camosun about a year ago, where we did mozzarella cheese.
mozzarella.
Yeah, that was great. Is that something that because I've been watching your growth as a chef as well in the last few years, and I've been watching you delve more and more into cheese, and it's something that you kind of are heralded for it at the government house. Is that something you might consider wanting to do to kind of branch out the business, when you get further down the line?
So the funny thing about dairy, especially in Canada, it's highly regulated. So
Mm,
in order to be able to sell cheese, you need to be a registered BC dairy, which it doesn't matter if you're looking to make one like 2 pound wheel of cheese once a year, or you're literally milking cows. You need to have the exact same specifications in the facilities that you're producing that in. So there's there's no gray area for this because government house is technically a private property. We're not a restaurant, so it would be the same as me making cheese at home and giving it away to friends. There's no actually an exchange in monetary value. So that's how I can make cheese at work, and then we essentially give it away. Um, but I could never sell it, nor could I enter it in any sort of cheese making competition, which is a shame because I really like my cheese. But the one day, I would really like to be able to have the farm, grow the peppers, have my own cows or goats, have my facility, and then if only then we'll be able to sell my cheese.
so it doesn't sound like there was a lot of regulation or anything around making the hot sauces. Like that was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, It is straightforward once you educate the people that do the inspections and the facility work and kind of update them. So if you go on the VHA website, they have a list of commodity products that you can make in your own home without regulation. I produce all of my stuff out of a commercial kitchen, so there's really no worry about that. It is inspected by VHA, but they have things like pickles, jams, jellies, vinegars. All those things are listed where you don't even need to contact VHA if you're making these, as long as if you have a lab test saying that the pH is under 4.6, you're good to go. But hot sauce isn't listed there, so I had to contact them, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's a high risk item. You need to have like this laundry list of things." And I said, "Well, why is it high risk? It's basically the same thing as me making pickles or vinegar or any of the other things." Because we said so. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. So it was about 2 months of going back and forth and showing them my recipes, showing them my lab results, doing all these things for them to be like, I guess I guess you could say it's like making barbecue sauce or vinegars or pickles. It's just basic food chemistry.
Yeah. So having said that, or are you one of the rare people on the island that has a hot sauce business? Are you the only one since they haven't really come across that before?
I'd say I am one of the only ones in the lower island. Salt Spring Island Jam Company, they do hot sauces, and there is a Vancouver Island hot sauce company up. I think it's in Nanaimo, Cobble Hill. And I don't know if they're still producing, but as of September of last year, when I contacted them for seeds and sort of guidance when the idea was coming, there's the Fat Chili Farm
Hmm.
up in Duncan or Cobble Hill, and they produce their own hot sauces and they grow chilies. But from what I've heard, they might have up and left the country. So
Wow.
I don't know.
Now I know you said that, one day you would love to have the farm and grow the peppers and do everything on your own. Where are you sourcing the peppers from now?
So I wish it wasn't 9:30 at night and we weren't glued to the computer, but I do have about 95 pepper plants in my point one of an acre residential home. So
Well,
my wife and I, we are avid gardeners. We like to grow as much produce as possible. So when we bought our house, we basically turned all of the green space into vegetable gardens. So I have one greenhouse and I have probably about 45 potted plants and then three 10 by 4 garden beds, as well as a community plot that we grow corn and stuff at.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So are you able to use you're basically making all your hot sauce from with the peppers that you're growing right now in your
So
greenhouse?
I use about right now, at least when I started, when I was more small fry, I was using about 40% of the peppers that we were growing, and then 60% was either sourced by local farms in the area or through Islands West, which is a local
Mhm.
produce supplier. Uh, as of right now, things are really ramping up. So I've had to track down other revenues or avenues to grab my peppers. There is an American company that has farms all around the world. So anytime I'm in a pinch, uh, I can get giant uh, gallon tubs of pepper mash. But that's usually the last ditch resort. We just finished the sort of pepper season, so I
Mhm.
invested heavily in a lot of fresh peppers myself. They're just in mash tubs right now, fermenting, and they'll be ready to be processed into mash in about 4 months.
Wow, well, it's a pretty long process, eh, to go from start to finish on a product?
So I like to give my peppers at least 6 months or for at least 3 months in the fermentation.
Mhm.
But it can go up to 6 months. I mean, you could go up to 2 years or longer, but 6 months is usually where I like to max it out because after that you start getting different sort of intense flavors that
Mm.
some people may not like. It's same with cheese making, same with wine, bourbon, anything that you're going to be aging for a long time. Excuse me. Whew. Um, but fermentation, if I was really stuck, I could pull it off at any time. I have pretty intense logs of when they start, when they finish. I check them every day, and the minimum amount of time is 2 weeks. That is usually when the active fermentation stops. Is
Interesting, man.
Yeah.
What was the what? So I know we were talking about cheese making and being able to enter cheese into contests and things of that nature. Is there an avenue for your hot sauce to kind of be displayed on those same levels where you're able to get into competitions and display it on a larger scale?
Yeah, there are. They're all shut down because of COVID, but
Mm.
there's a heat wave expo in London, Ontario. Um, I might try to start something here in Victoria because I feel like Ontario gets too much love with all of these like expos and competitions and showcases, and nobody in Vancouver's doing it. So there's enough pepperheads in the area that you can drag some people out, even do it on a small scale.
I've never heard the term pepperheads. That's a new one
Yeah,
for me.
pepperheads, spice lords, pepperheads, sadists. It's all the same thing.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
So this is great, man. Like I want to say congrats on starting the business because that itself is a big deal, and it sounds like you had to go through some hoops with Viha in terms of getting the approval for everything. I noticed on your Instagram page you guys have exceeded 400 followers as well. So kudos to you, man, for getting that off the ground and
thank
getting the
you.
early success that you're having.
Yeah, we're going through a big transition right now. So the farmers markets are ending, but you know me, constantly hustling, constantly pushing. So I made a big push for grocery stores, and right now you can find us in our full capacity at Market on Yates, Market on Millstream, and Zero Waste Emporium. Those three grocery stores have been avid supporters since we started back in May. Much respect to all of them. But I don't know who you are, and if you ever do listen to this, there's an employee at Fairways that decided that our product was so good that they wanted to talk to the lead buyer for the deli department that purchases jams, jellies, hot sauces, and 3 weeks time we'll be in 6 out of the 10 Fairways in the Greater Victoria area, growing, and then after a trial period, we'll be at all 10. So it's a huge jump for us.
That's awesome, man. That's super. So, and in terms of packaging and creating the product and having the space for all of this stuff, like, are you able to keep up with all this? It seems like you guys are making a big boom right now.
You know what? My father always taught me to say yes first and then figure it out after, because you can always solve problems, but opportunities sometimes don't come twice. So right now, our storage system is the garage. If things explode to, because there are a couple, I don't want to jinx it, so I'm not going to say them, but there are a couple of other big chain grocery stores that are also looking into our products. So right now we're in three in Victoria, two in Ontario, soon to be nine in Victoria. Confirmed, or sorry, 10 in Victoria confirmed because the root cellar is also picking up our products, but there are a couple of other big chains which will bring up our total to 45 grocery stores in Victoria.
That's
So it's
awesome.
so if that happens, there will be some severe transition decisions to be made in terms of storage and production because it would definitely uh, over overpass what we have right now.
What and now I noticed you guys have a pretty diverse lineup of sauces and jellies and things. Is it hard to come by some of these peppers? Because are some of these exotic and international and hard to cut across, or are you growing the majority of the things that you would have a hard time importing in?
So the only pepper that I would have a hard time getting is the Sugar Rush peach pepper, which I grow. Um, all of the main hot sauces in my lineup are all pretty like not generic, but they're very mainstream chilies. So you have the California Fresno, which is like you can get it all year round. It's grown either in California, Mexico, or Arizona. So you can get those all year round. Pricing varies, obviously, but pretty easy to get. The other ones are jalapenos and serranos. You get those all year round. Pretty good quality. The best quality always for peppers is between August to October. That's usually when, especially in our area, because that's when the closest farms are getting their main harvests. And then you have Scott. I'll get the Scotch bonnets. That's a little pin. We'll put a pin in Scotch bonnets, so we're going to talk about McDonald's after. Um, but yeah, and then bird's eye chilies, like Thai chilies, are pretty easy. Habaneros are easy. Reapers are hard, but I grow those. Those are my main plants. The main plants of the Reapers because they're the most expensive,
Mm.
um, and they're the hardest to come by. Because here in Victoria, the main supplier for Reapers is actually in Holland.
Huh.
So they with COVID, it was pretty much like a no go to get them. And even if I was to get them, they cost about $88 a pound.
Wow.
So that's why I started growing them because it's not. I'd have to charge like $30 a bottle on my on my Reaper sauce.
Yeah, it'd be like a bottle of scotch, basically.
Yeah.
Uh,
But yeah, we're gonna talk about Scotch bonnets, and so you might find this really interesting. So I don't know if you noticed this, but McDonald's had this big. This is how you know that spicy food is hitting the mainstream. So we talk about flavor trends.
mm,
So we're in the we're in the era of mainstream spicy food, and
hmm.
the biggest sign is that McDonald's had the habanero McChicken, Scotch bonnet McChicken, ghost chili McChicken. Uh, Only I would notice this because I'm searching for them. Um, but it was almost near impossible to find Scotch bonnets this year, and the reason why is because McDonald's took them all.
Wow.
So I listened to a podcast where there was at the time he was a R&D chef for McDonald's. He's not. He's a pretty famous McDonald's chef, Chef Mike. But he talked about how he wanted to make a fresh blueberry tart for McDonald's, and they said they're like, sure, no problem. Just so you're aware, we're going to require the entire world supply of fresh blueberries. So if you make this decision, just be aware that you're going to be the person who decides that nobody else gets fresh blueberries.
Jesus.
And he decided I don't want to do that. It just talks like global buying, like how much that affects people. And so they took Scotch bonnets. So all of the mainstream revenues for Scotch bonnets were taken by McDonald's. So unless you're growing your own or knew a farmer that was growing them directly for you, it was damn near impossible to get Scotch bonnets. I was very thankful for my spicy mustard has Scotch bonnets. I had got about 30 pounds of them just before they all disappeared.
Wow.
But I tried to get more and I couldn't find it. And then I realized that it was because McDonald's took them all.
Wow, that's incredible. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that that was a thing. So you're on the right track, right? If hot sauce is becoming a thing, if this is if things of spicy nature are in the mainstream fold, this obviously, is going to reap benefits for what you're doing right now.
Yeah. And as you mentioned before, like we have hot sauce, pepper jellies, seasonings. I have a fermented honey infused with ghost chilies and garlic. So there's a lot of diversity to our lineup, even in the flavors of the hot sauce. And that's just diversification within a product is how you get a bigger market share. So hot sauce right now, like most hot sauce fanatics, pepperheads, spice lords, whatever you want to call them. It doesn't matter if they have a hot sauce bottle at home; they'll have an entire shelf in their fridge dedicated to hot sauce. A lot of guys like they'll come by my booth and they'll give me this look where like they know they're going to get in trouble by their significant other if they buy something. So um, I know that they'll be back, but even if you go on Reddit, there's a hot sauce Reddit, spicy, and then even peppers, and people post their collections all the time, and sometimes it's like hundreds of bottles of open hot sauce that is they still have hot sauce in it. So um, it is a giant market that has plenty of market share left. But having stuff like pepper jellies that aren't super spicy but sweet gets an entirely new demographic of people. Um, and it for the hot sauce people who see, I have two very unique pepper jellies. I have a habanero gold, and then I have a Reaper garlic jelly. The Reaper jelly really catches people off guard because they expect it to be this like devastating amount of heat, but when they realize that they're tasting this beautiful pepper that they've never experienced this flavor before, and they ask themselves like, what is this sensation that I'm feeling? And it's all of the beauty of the Carolina Reaper without any of that like bring you to your knees pain. And it was just this balance that I found with making like classic red pepper garlic jelly, and then adding these demon peppers into it that came with this sort of like unifying cohesion that it's still one of my favorite things to eat. So you get it's like a bridge. I like to think of it as a bridge between the hot sauce people and the pepper jelly people.
Yeah. You're unifying both sides with your with your jelly.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. Is it no when you're describing some of your hot sauces and the flavors that you're getting into some of your products, was there a lot of trial and error when you were making these products, or were you kind of hitting it on the head, do you think, right from the get-go?
So I think I wouldn't say I nailed it at the get go, but I'm definitely the type of person where I have faith in what I'm doing, so I go hard uh, always. So there was no micro batches. My batches are always between 200 to 700 bottles, depending on how many peppers are fermented in that batch. So the recipes change a little by little per batch, but that it's very very minimal. So there's the tweaks are there, but for the most part, most of the recipes were just like thought of them, processed them, tasted great.
Is there one in particular that is the standout or that sells the most?
It's funny. I get this question asked all the time from the grocery buyers because I have six hot sauces, so they generally always want to just take the heavy hitters.
Mhm.
But my hot sauce lineup is so diverse that they literally speak to different people. So some days when I'm at the market, always bring a case of everything. So that's 12 hot sauces. And some days it'll be only the Reaper sauce or only the salsa verde, or it'll be like an even spread between all six of them. Lately, it's been like a mustard kick. I bring out the brand new spicy mustard, and I can like barely keep it on the table because people are like, "Oh, there's a mustard. I want the mustard," and then they come back the next week and they buy four bottles because they've already finished their first bottle.
That's awesome, and I'm really excited about where this is gonna go because it sounds like it's only getting bigger, it's only getting more popular. As you mentioned earlier, I have probably off the top of my head at least minimum 5 or 6 hot sauces in my fridge door, all open, all actively in use because actually and this goes back to something you just said a moment ago, there there's a sauce for every purpose. Like, there's a sauce I like with wings, there's a sauce I like with eggs, there's a sauce I like with fries. There's a sauce I like with each particular food item. Like and I like a certain hot sauce to be on pizza, for example, opposed to other ones. And so for you, it sounds like, you guys have a good diversity, and knowing that when you go to a grocery store, it's already pretty jam packed in terms of the hot sauces that are there. And most of the companies are pretty big companies. Did you find that it was hard to get in right away, or was there a good reception from the grocery stores in Victoria when you were promoting the product?
So I'm very thankful for the two store managers at the market on Yates and Millstream. They're both hot sauce people. The market on Millstream hot sauce selection is probably the best one in Victoria. They're the only grocery store where I've ever seen where when you're looking at what's in the aisles, where it would be like sugar or baking, it literally says hot sauce.
Huh.
And so you go to that aisle, and the entire, depending on which way you're entering it, but the entire right side for maybe half the aisle is just top to bottom hot sauce. And they put my stuff in a wonderful location where it's spot on. And and I will say no, it's not that hard to get my stuff into the stores as long as if I can get them to sample it.
Mm.
So that's usually the thing that separates my stuff from other people's, is that once you taste mine, then you ask yourself, why have I been wasting my time with all of this other garbage? My my father-in-law was a diehard Tabasco fan. He just was Tabasco on everything. He had all the flavors of Tabasco. He had Tabasco at work. He had his Franks at work. That was like the only hot sauce he had. But as a son-in-law, as my father-in-law, he had to try my hot sauce. And he told me, he's like, "You've ruined it. You've ruined cheap hot sauce for me."
What was your response?
I said, "Good."
Good, yeah. Go buy some.
He's been really good.
I know you said in the beginning, this kind of started as a fundraiser idea in terms of raising money for the CCF. Is what you're doing now in any coordination with the CCF, or is it just strictly Island Chef Pepper Company now?
So I still do. The company will always have its roots in the charity that it started from. So if you go on my website, we have an entire collection line that is the CF charity line. So I still produce hot sauces through the company that 100% of the money spent goes directly to the CF fund that
Wow,
we use to support the scholarships and all the stuff that it was originally intended. Um, and To be honest, during the pandemic, I've pretty much donated all of the profits to people in need from the startup. So, Steve, as a CF member, you can attest to this. When the pandemic started, I sent out an email letting anybody know that if they needed help, just to send me an email, and people did take me up on that. And the good fortune that the sauce company has been giving me, I've been actively passing that out to make sure that people can feed their kids, can pay their rent, can have a bit of a bridge between their jobs, because it's a hard time for all of us right now during this pandemic.
that's amazing, man. Kudos, bravo to you. That's like really, really just shows how deep your heart is, man. And I know that like everything you've done, you like you said, you go hard. You put everything into it, and it shows. And it shows because your quality is always there. Now with the CCF and the Victoria food scene, just the food scene in general, with what COVID has done to it, how challenging has it been? Because I know the CCF in Victoria was starting to really ramp up, and it's sort of in whether coincidence or not, when you took over as the president, and it was starting to really engage a lot of the younger cooks and a lot of the younger chefs through competitions, a few competitions that I was a part of, that you were a judge in. Um, and has COVID, affected the numbers in terms of people that are actively members or participating? And how has COVID affected what the CCF is doing?
COVID, I'm gonna speak very candidly. COVID is killing the association. COVID is killing our industry. COVID is killing lots of people. It's affecting um, it's affecting a lot, but particularly Speaking more specifically to the Culinary Federation, so we were having some membership issues when I started. We were very stagnant association. It was basically like a dinner club. So when I took over, I wanted to make it more active, do more competitions, more workshops, more charities, and get us out there, get us involved, and become a community again. And the momentum was starting; it was going really well, and then COVID happened, and it was basically like a gut punch. People don't respond to emails. I don't expect, membership renewals are going to be coming out in the next few weeks. I don't expect more than a handful of people to maybe renew. Basically, anybody whose membership is not paid through their like corporately, I don't expect to renew their membership. There's just there's not enough availability of what's going on. There's not enough interest. Some days I feel like I'm smashing my head against the wall trying to get responses to emails. We tried a farm bag. We started Farm Chef U in Victoria, which was a farm bag where we were purchasing produce from local farms, eggs, and a local small business product. Island Chef Pepperco made a couple of appearances in there, and that was just completely donated to the bag from myself. But the goal wasn't to make money; it was to just support these small farms that were losing revenue that they couldn't make at farmers markets, that they couldn't sell to restaurants, that they couldn't do anything with this produce because we don't like to see food waste and we don't want to see anybody struggle. So we had started this. And let me tell you, where there's some hard weeks when it was just me and one other person going to all of the farms and delivering all of the bags because we couldn't get more than the two of us to come and help. So I'm hopeful. I'm looking to the future. I'm still trudging it out, but people are demoralized by the pandemic. They're demoralized by the lack of work, the lack of respect that people have for the food service industry or any sort of customer service worker. So there's a lot more issues to be going on, and people can't give the energy to the charity or volunteer programs.
Yeah, it's really that the food service industry, I think, maybe more than anything, has been affected and hit the hardest because not only is it an industry where, in the last few years, you saw minimum wage was starting to go up a little bit. The cost for rent and for properties is going up. And then, of course, there's such a thin margin for profit in that business as it
Yeah.
stands. And so all of a sudden, and most of these businesses are small businesses, so they're local ownership. And so all of a sudden it just gets hammered with this complete closure of every business for a handful of months, and then it slowly reopens. And then as things have reopened, they obviously haven't gone back to what each establishment would like to see in terms of full capacity. And it seems like this kind of the only thing that's been able to survive is the kind of this Pizza Hut model where it's all takeout. And and it could be, I was thinking about this earlier today, and it could be a thing that works in the favor of downsizing some of the larger restaurants in the city and just getting smaller spots where you're just getting a kitchen, you have low overhead because you don't have staff, you don't have to really spend on decor or menus or any of those things. And so your food costs, your basically all your money would go into your food costs and paying your rent. Do you think that this is going to be, it? I don't want to say the new future or the new normal or whatever it is, but in terms of the restaurant industry transitioning into something else, do you think that this model, the kind of Pizza Hut Panago kind of model, for lack of a better comparison, is going to be like the new trend that restaurants are going to have to take on because they just can't support having the full capacity that they were used to before?
Absolutely. I can guarantee that COVID is reshaping the restaurant industry, and any restaurant owner that isn't smart enough to do a hard change from the sit down and dine in model is going to close their doors. And we've already seen the hundreds, if not thousands, of restaurants across Canada that
Mhm.
that are they're closing their doors. Restaurants that have been open for 30 plus years. That
Mhm.
usually the lifetime of a restaurant, if they can make it past that 5 year mark, that's when they finally start making money. They're good. They have their base. They have all of their capital expenses paid off, and they're good to go. I give anybody much respect who's trying to open up a restaurant in the middle of the pandemic. That it would be a horrifying endeavor, and I wish all the best luck to them. But I'd say that it's going to be, and this is going to be my where I'm hedging my bets. The culinary industry is going to end up finding this happy median between like ready to pick up, ready to eat food and provisions, to where it'll be like the reheat at home model.
Mhm.
And I'm going to give a shout out to the Ferris
Mhm.
Group. So a good friend of mine is the chef there, Chef Aaron Lawrence, very talented man. I'm not sure if he was the one who made this, but this blew my mind. So for Father's Day, my wife asked me what I wanted for Father's Day breakfast, because I always cook, and she's a great cook, but she's not the most confident in the kitchen. And just to be a jerk, I said I wanted smoked salmon, eggs Benedict, because it's it's a slightly complicated breakfast.
Yeah.
It's one of the more complicated breakfast choices that I could have made. And because my wife is a very smart and crafty software engineer, she found a heat at home smoked salmon eggs Benny from Ferris's. And let me tell you that it blew my mind to watch her reheat hollandaise on the stovetop and have it come out perfect. Like, I could tell you that I could not have made it at home better. I couldn't have made it at a restaurant better myself. It was spot on, delicious. I have no idea what they did to be able to reheat that hollandaise so well, but as
Yeah.
a cook yourself, you know what a feat that is, to be able to have the confidence to hand it to someone who obviously doesn't know how to cook very well, and like have them reheat it at home with very detailed instructions, and it came out amazing. um, and I think models like that, to be able to, if you're able to do that successfully, which there are quite a number of Victoria mainstays that have been able to do that, that's what's going to be allowing people to succeed and keeping the doors open, because anybody who thinks that we're going to go back to the way life is like 6 months from now, 4 months from now, is delusional. I foresee like 2 years from now, it's still going to be like the modified normal. I like when people say this is the new normal. It's like this is the relative normal. People need to understand that masks are probably going to be a thing now.
Yeah.
They've always been a thing in China and Japan and lots of Asia countries. Like, even pre pandemic, it's not. It's crazy for us as North Americans, but in a lot of other cultures, they're just like, okay, not a big deal. The social distancing, people are having a bit of a hard time with that. We're very enclosed here on the island because we
Mhm.
have very little cases, sometimes none, for the last several months. Whereas like the world around us is on fire. So people
Mhm.
here are like, there's no pandemic. Why are people wearing masks? We only have like one case and we don't even know who that guy is. Is it real?
Yeah.
Whereas like, the rest of the world's just like, oh my God, we're quarantined. We can't leave our house and people are out playing tennis here. So
Yeah. What now, both of us had worked in fine dining. You still work in fine dining as well. What do you think this does for fine dining as a whole? Because it's going to cause a real, I mean, Ferris's might be able to make hollandaise that you can take home and replicate, but I don't think every other restaurant will be able to follow suit and be able to do things in that dynamic. So I don't know if this kind of spells, I don't wanna say the end of fine dining, but it certainly is a foreshadowing to possibly that coming to a closure.
so like French and Russian table service is done. I don't see that ever coming back within, the next decade. Look at the three Michelin star restaurants. Like, my perfect example I always like to look on is Alenia.
Mm.
Alenia is in the top 50 best restaurants in the world. What are they doing during the pandemic? They turned their, like, I've eaten dinner at there, and it is quite the production. They have a lot of employees. What did they do? They brought everybody in. They have like they do temperature checks. They're like very good. There's no social distancing, but like everybody's cleared every day. But they're doing takeout. They say this is what the meal is. This is how many we're doing. When it's sold out, it's sold out, and they've been selling out 500 entrees or 500 dinners every night since March.
Wow.
And it comes with it's like basically like a 5 course dinner that you pick up. It costs hundreds of dollars. Um, but they're still keeping the doors open. They're still making money. They did a huge, and they have 5 restaurants through Chicago and New York. Um, David Chang's restaurants are doing the exact same thing. So in terms of the fine dining, you're just going to see elevated takeout. You're going to see these masters of food who don't want to give up, who are going to adjust, and they're going to be like, you know what? You're going to have fine dining in your home in these clamshell boxes because I believe in you. And I like that's going to be the transition. So it's you know, like I said, it's going to be this delicate balance between a take and go and like reheat at home. So whether or not it's fresh and ready or sort of leftovers when you make it your own will, but like to me, um, that is the transition that we will see, and anybody who who already hasn't started thinking about that and is still trying to hold on to what it was 8 months ago is going to close their doors in the next like 6 to 7 months.
Yeah, there's been, like you mentioned, across the country and even in Victoria alone. I was looking on Use Victoria, and it's sad. It really is sad to see how many restaurants are up for sale, how many businesses are closing, how many businesses are selling the restaurants for super cheap, like way cheaper than they ever should. So it's really a tough time, and of course with that comes everyone that's a part of these brigades, everyone that's the part of the operation, the guts of the restaurants, the front of the house staff, the back of the house staff. I know with this industry, there comes a lot of mental anguish. There comes a lot of stress. There comes a lot of anxiety. Is that something that you guys have been talking about with the CCF? Like I know with a lot of people aren't working. Have people reached out to you and looked for resources and sharing stories in terms of what they're going through right now?
So in Victoria, it's been maybe like a handful, but it's not necessarily that they reach out to me. They're just people that are close to me.
Mm,
So you check in on them, see how they're doing. There's a mass exodus that's going to be happening with culinary workers from Victoria. I can already think of 7 um, talented cooks and chefs that are leaving or are in the process of leaving to go to more dense populations where they can get work. There was for some people, for some owners, the COVID was actually a blessing because there was also a labor crisis here where we didn't have enough workers. People were having forced overtime, no
mhm.
vacations, just like endless amounts of work because there was nobody to cover shifts. But now with the lack of business or sort of lack of extended hours, some restaurants have been able to like stabilize their payroll, have been able to provide people with reasonable amounts of work, and their mental health is getting better. So as long as if those restaurants are managing the finances and the transition, it's great for those cooks. But let's look at the restaurant or sort of the establishment that you and I met at, the Empress, right? They we went through that renovation that caused massive layoffs, as they
Mm,
like to call them, and then everybody comes back to a pandemic,
mm,
and then everybody gets it's 400 or 500 employees got laid off, and then the gradual reopen happened, and there's 75 to 100 employees who got brought back. And then because there's no revenue coming in for the hotel, they decided, let's just lay everybody off again. We're going to do more renovations, right? So it just goes to show you the value that some of the bigger establishments actually have on their staff. It's just, ah, when we open, there'll be people. There'll be people who would come here.
Yeah, that's I ran into I still keep in touch with a lot of the cooks and people that work there, and I came across a guy who had been working there or has been employed there for over 2 decades, and he still hasn't been recalled. And then he was just telling me that he's panicking because they're gonna shut down for 3 months, and, what are you supposed to do? And the really sad part about this too is, in an establishment like that, you have people who have dedicated decades of service, to that company, and, when you get to a certain age, it's harder to find work, for in whatever respect. And I think with cooks as well, one thing that I used to always look at was some form of exit strategy, because I always felt like from a cooking perspective, you can only really cook, and be a line cook for so long before you want to do something different. And whether that is advancement to be kind of more in the managerial positions where you're more of an administrative chef, rather than in hands-on on the line chef, or starting something up, doing something in as far as a business is concerned, exactly what you're doing right now, actually. So when I used to come do talks at Camosun, I used to always try and put that seed into the cooks' brains in the first and second years of just saying that, there's much more to this industry outside of the four walls of the kitchen line than you might think. So it's always good to keep your mind open and to kind of look at the different options that you have. And I think that chefs kind of underestimate how much they know and how talented they really are and how many different things they can do. And so there's a lot of extra skills that you gain and that you have as a chef, to do something like start a business and start making hot sauces and do those kinds of things. And you're talking about this mass exodus. A lot of the people that I've kept up with from the Empress have completely left and are just on to new things. Is this a thing that you're seeing? Like you're talking to people in the industry, they're leaving. What are they leaving for? What are they leaving to? Are they still trying to cook? Are they trying to take on other pursuits, like other interests they might have or other skills they might have?
Some are heading over to Vancouver to try and like in some hope of finding more cook jobs. Some are going into construction because you can be a floor sweeper for $25 an hour, working 5 days a week, 8 till 4. Because construction is a controlled trade, and the culinary industry isn't, so they can uh, like their general wages are bartered at a grander scale, at a government scale, whereas uh, ours really isn't. Um, Mental health in our industry is a really important issue to me. Um, I'm not gonna say pride myself because I hate pride, but I really like to make a point to be able to keep myself open to talk to people, to share experiences. I myself am a young person, but I have been in kitchens for 17 years, and it has been a journey that could have been a lot easier and could have been a lot worse. So I don't at all try to superimpose myself into other people's stories to try and understand how they're feeling, but I know the general view on our industry is trash. Um, you'd be surprised how many times I'm at a dinner table with people who have really nice jobs, who make a lot more money than they should be making, and they start trash talking lower cooks. Like your line cooks, your food service employees, your McDonald's, your Tim Hortons, your whatever, and they're very shocked when I'm offended. Vince, you cook for the lieutenant governor. You've cooked for the royal family. We're not talking about you. Yes, yes, you are. I am those people. These are my people. It doesn't matter who I've cooked for, what I've done, what I will do. When you talk about that minimum wage employee at McDonald's who is doing their best, trying to make money for themselves, trying to pay rent, trying cooking food, trying to feed their family, and you look at them as trash, you are calling me trash too. Like I am no better than that person. That those are my people, 100%. And I try and pass on that knowledge as frequently and as aggressively as possible because I don't let anybody talk about my people like that because it's ignorant.
That's interesting you say that because I, as a former cook, I look at when I'm at Tim Hortons or anywhere, Pizza Hut. I was at Pizza Hut on Halloween, and I was ordering some takeout, and they were just busy, and people are flying. You got the drivers coming in and out, picking up orders, everyone on the cash, people in the back, and I make it a point to just, to kind of always look at that and remind myself of what it was like to be in service. And I always say, you guys are killing it. You guys are doing a great job because they probably don't hear that from anyone, right? They just people walk in. How much is my bill? Here's your money. See you later. And I always look at the workers and I'm like, man, these guys are killing it. Like I remember that adrenaline that you have and you've got a ticker constantly going, the phone's going, you got people walking in and you're flat out the entire time. And then the greatest sense of relief is at the end of the shift when you're all done and you're sweeping up and you're cleaning and you kind of look at each other. And it's like if you've ever been in a really big sports game or some sort of competitive event and you kind of look at each other with this look of like happiness and fatigue at once and this sort of joy as well that you are able to do it side by side with the people you're doing it with. There's a real sense of camaraderie that this industry brings out with people, and I think that when we talk about mental health, it often is a resort for people who don't necessarily feel like they fit in other areas of life, and then they come into a kitchen and they feel like they're just around a bunch of other misfits like themselves, and they find out that these are the greatest people I've ever, I've been searching for these people forever, and then you find people who cement long-term friendships that come out of this industry as well, and that's really I merit you for sticking up for everyone that works in the food service industry, whether it is at a five-star restaurant or whether it's a fast food restaurant. Like it's still the same idea is that you're providing the service, you're providing food to people. And I think when the COVID initially hit, when the biggest shock to people's systems because not like you and I who can cook and like to cook, most people don't really go out of their way to learn how to cook, so they had to do that, right? And I think the biggest sense of relief for them was when restaurants started opening up again, so you could see how impactful the food service industry is at every level. And you're right, when you are denigrating one group of people, it's the entire group of people, it's regardless of where they work.
Yeah, absolutely. To your point where, when we worked to each other, like I can confirm, you're like, you're killing it. You do this. You are, um, we were both, what was even the position called?
Oh,
Not commie cooks, but so there's
Cook's
cooks
assistant or
assistant.
something?
Yeah,
Yeah,
cooks
that's right,
assistant.
yeah.
When we were cooks assistants together, people were like, even at the Empress, like people were so like unnecessarily aggressive
Mhm.
to me as a newcomer, and it had a lot to do with the fact that I knew the executive chef on a personal level, and that I'll go on record. I hate unions because my one union experience was at the Empress, and because I was perceived to be buddy buddy with management, I was ostracized. Um, and it was just like, all right, cool, but like you were just like, no man, let's do it. It's we're doing it great. You're doing great. You're always hustling. Like I love it. And you to me, you were like a really good shining light when I was at the Empress. So when you reached out to come talk on the show, I was like, great. I haven't talked to Steven forever. This will be awesome. But to your point about that, you're absolutely right that people don't like they don't get any sort of um, build up. Uh, when I go to restaurants or even when I call people, anybody in customer service, this isn't even food service industry. This is, shout out to anybody in customer service because they just get hammered all day. And I know I'm with you. I hear you. I see you. and I'll be the person to walk up and be like, "You're doing great. How are you doing today? I don't care about how I'm doing. How are you doing? Are you doing okay? You're doing an amazing job. You're beautiful. Thank you very much." And I go on my way. Um, the amount of times I've had service staff and they're like, they're going through the motions like, "Hi, my name is Kayla, and this is this. Have you read the menu? How are you doing today?" "I'm fine, thank you. How are you?" And it's this like bold stop where they don't even know how to respond
Yeah.
because it's probably the first time in weeks anybody has asked them how they're doing. And it's slightly depressing. It's slightly depressing to like see that like little whimper in their eye that it's like, holy shit, this person just like connected with me for a brief moment. Um, and I was at Michael's 2 days ago getting little glue stickers for those Christmas packs that I made. Um, and this older woman was just completely berating this wonderful team member with the most patience in the entire world, and she was so polite the entire time to her, and was just getting berated because she wouldn't give this lady the seniors discount, because in order to get a seniors discount you need to be a Michael's Awards member, and she didn't want to be a rewards member, she just wanted to get the seniors discount. And she was very patiently explaining to this lady, and the lady told her to F off, and then she left. And then so I was very thankful when I got called up to the till and I got called up to that person, and without addressing what had just happened, I just said, "Thank you very much. You're doing an amazing job. I know you're wearing a mask, but keep up the smile." And I could tell that that meant a lot. And like to me, those are just words. I could have said nothing and been on with my day. It wouldn't have affected my day at all. But I like to think that that little moment, that little kind gesture, gave that beautiful human being a little more strength to get through her day, because it's hard out there, and people have forgotten how to respect people. I don't know, when your
Hmm.
kids, you always see parents say please and thank you. Like I sit there, hand out Halloween candy. Even during the pandemic, we got 400 kids. We have 400 kids to my house. Last year we got 800. But the parents come up. What do you say? Please and thank you. So the parents are teaching kids respect. But are the parents respecting people outside of teaching their kids respect? And at what point in our lives do we transition from being these like innocent human beings who only see good, who don't like see any sort of discrimination or hate, and we're, for the most part, families are actively teaching their children to be good people. Where does this transition into monsters happen? Because there's, and I'm not going to say I'm perfect, I have bad days too, but it just seems like lately it's just been trash. Like there's this giant dumpster fire and we're all living in trash, and people are just, there's no care for anybody else other than yourself.
Yeah, it's tough. And I also do the same thing when I'm in Starbucks drive through, or when I call on the phone. I used to do tons of customer service jobs my entire life. So I get it. Like the people that are on the phone, I would just pick up the phone and be like, hello, and I would just get screamed at. And I'd be like, man, that's the worst way to start my day or to start a conversation. So when I am on the phone, that's the first thing I always say is I say, how are you doing? And you're right. It's always a pause. And they're just like, did someone just acknowledge me? Did someone just ask me how my day is going? And even at Starbucks, the Starbucks that's up by Uptown, I always go through the drive-through, and there's a gentleman that works there, and I always ask him how he's doing, and I will say, "You guys are doing a great job," because that lineup never ends, and so they're just hammering out ticket after ticket, and I always say to the guy, I was like, "How you doing today?" And he always stops everything he's doing and just looks at me like, you just asked me how I'm doing? Like, this is amazing. And you're right. You get it dawns on you that through the course of this person's day, maybe one person has gone out of their way to actually ask them and to acknowledge that they're there, to acknowledge that they exist and that they're working, and to actually say hello to them and to ask them a question rather than just here's my phone. Like, people just stick their phone out so they can scan their phone, or they stick their debit out so they can tap or whatever, and then they're on their way. And when I think a lot of it, I think there has been, as as terrible as the situation has been in the last handful of months, I think there has been some positivity that's come out of it, that people have been relying on each other to kind of motivate each other, to inspire each other, to push each other, to kind of, to just try to keep our heads up, because it has been such a tumultuous period. And in terms of mental health, like, I don't think we've ever had this discussion, but mental health is part of the biggest reason why I left the culinary industry, because I literally hit a wall, the proverbial wall, and I walked into, as we were talking about this earlier, it was May 19th. I walked into, um, Chef Wilson's office, and I just sat down. I broke down, and I was just like, I can't change into my whites today. I'm like, I can't do it, and I'm like, I don't even know if I ever can. And so there was a lot of stuff that I had been, dealing with. A lot of it stemmed from, my mom's passing about 9 years ago, that I kind of pushed down and barreled deep inside me. And then through the course of working, in the industry, I had two kids. I was an apprentice. I was, doing work. I was with the CF, and I was doing competitions, and I was actively contributing, at work in very, many ways, in terms of communication packages and writing, feature menus, and all sorts of things. So I was taking on so much, and I just got to a point where I was so distant at home, and I was so focused on work, but at the same time, I wasn't necessarily getting the support from work that I would have hoped to get, and I was just doing everything on my own. And it just came to a head, and everything kind of came crashing down, and I literally left chef's office, went straight to a doctor, and that turned into me being off work for about 8 months, 8 or 9 months. 2 or 3 of those first months, just really in a funk, just not really sure about what direction to go in, where I was, what I was going to do. A complete, loss of identity. Like, it was a really, really challenging time. Um, and it was something that, and then I had a few other colleagues who left, for similar reasons. And, as I worked in the industry, I noticed it a lot, that it was something that was affecting a lot of our, colleagues, a lot of our friends. And it was really hurtful to see, because it didn't seem like there was really ever the conversation wasn't happening. So there wasn't a lot of avenues to help people, to support people, to guide them into certain directions. And I feel like now more than ever, that's something that is affecting, the mindset of anyone that's a cook or a chef, in our industry. Has there been anything that you've heard of that, in terms of resources that people are putting together for, workers in this industry?
So the national board is putting some stuff together. Whether or not the finer details of it haven't been released yet, but it might be just a resource pack. It might be recommendations. Um, there were a couple of Zoom meetings where there was some seminars talking about the transition we were going through, mental health. Mental health is a really hard subject for some people to grasp, and especially in the culinary industry. It's funny, um, that we're talking about this just on Friday. So the company's starting to do better. I work. I'm a very dedicated off work. I'm either at home, I'm with my wife, I'm with my child, or I'm working on the pepper company. Um, Working on myself, that hasn't happened in a while, but there's but you do other things. Um, and my management team actually had the audacity of telling me that I needed to dial back my company on Friday. They they said that they were worried that the newfound success would keep me too busy and that I will burn out, and they're worried about my physical and mental health. And they are heavily suggesting that I dial it back a bit. And I was absolutely mortified at the audacity of such a request, because what I do when I leave work is absolutely nobody's business. I thought I was just merely just sharing some happy news with my colleagues, which turned into this deposition of questioning about what I'm doing.
Mm,
Um, and I went on a tirade talking about nobody has ever cared about burnout or mental health when I've been forced to work 65 days in a row, or
mhm,
when I work 2 weeks straight with 12-hour days, finishing with a 20-hour day, immediately followed by a 6 a.m. brunch. No one has ever cared about burnout. And right now work is under renovations, so I'm doing administrative work. So to be honest, right now, like sitting at a desk all day doing computer work and then going and working in a kitchen for 6 hours is actually a lot less work than I'm used to doing right now, um, which is funny. But and then I said, when we're done the renovations and you are all going to be in full, you know, reclaim mode where it's like we need to catch up on lost time, are you going to care about my mental health, my physical health, and my like the worry about burnout as you stockpile events on my plate and I don't see my wife or kids for like months? are
mm.
are, are you going to care as much then? um and I was just met with silence. So like it was just it's just crazy. People don't really understand mental health. It's like this moment of, you need to take care of yourself, but don't take any days off.
Mm.
Don't rest, and don't actually do anything for you unless it's beneficial for someone else. And speaking of which, Steve, you know, how are you feeling now? How are you? You said you've gone through all that. How are you feeling now?
I am, and I want to give a shout out to Chef Wilson, because Morgan Wilson at the Empress, the executive chef, because when I went into his office and sat down and told him what I was going through and the difficulties I was having and the challenges I was having, he literally just said, "It's all good. Just take your knives home, hang out, let me know when you need to come back. Don't worry about the schedule and don't worry about anything. I'll take care of everything." He's like, "It's all good. It's all taken care of." And like he was very, very receptive and open to understanding, what my situation was, um, and just let me do my thing. So I really respect him for that. How I'm feeling now, I'm feeling great, to be honest with you, man. Like I've been, in a weird way, appreciate cooking more now than when I was working in the brigade at the hotel. Obviously I don't get to experiment with things as much as I would like to, and play with amazing machines and tools and products. But I still have everything. Like I still have all my knives. I still butcher fish when I can. I still actively cook multiple times a day just because I don't like spending money on food that I can make better at home. My kids are really involved in the cooking process as well at home as well. So for me personally, like the reason for wanting to leave was just to reconnect with my family. I felt like I was disconnecting myself from them, and at the same time, I was disconnecting from my own self. Like I mentioned, I went through a period where I kind of lost my identity, which is really strange, and I lost my confidence, which is also really strange because anyone that knows me knows I'm really, upbeat and ambitious, and really have a good sense of self. And so I got to a point where I kind of lost all of that, and then I regained it. And it took a lot of reading, it took a lot of research, it took a lot of work. And I was very dedicated to putting the work in and kind of understanding, what number one, understanding what depression was, because that's what I was ultimately going through. Um, and then not only understanding what it was, but then accepting it, and then being able to, spend a lot of months bettering myself physically, mentally, and then transitioning into a completely different line of work, which allows me to have time at home. Well, all the time at home now because I literally work from home. Um, but it's been great. It was really hard, but it's been really great. I've been able to utilize, my platform previously was utilized as kind of my cooking portfolio. That's what I used my Instagram and my social media as, and I've kind of turned that into now a reflection of mental health support, and then also really taking on a lot of different media stuff that I've always been passionate about my whole life as well. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me. I've had friends reach out to me who I've known my entire life, who I never for a second would have thought or knew were going through any mental health challenges, who reached out to me, and were like, we really appreciate that you've opened up and expressed yourself publicly about the things that you're going through, because they've been dealing with it for their whole life and they felt comfortable enough to actually talk to me about it, and they haven't talked to other people about it. And I've had other cooks and chefs reach out to me as well and say, "This is amazing that you're providing this sort of support and this platform, because I'm going through it, or I have gone through it, or a friend's going through it." So for me, it really feels good to acknowledge that I was going through something and to be open enough to talk about it and to have people be receptive enough to it. Because like I said, like I think it's something that not only affects the industry, it affects people in general, and especially now in the time period we're in. I think it's probably something that's on the forefront um, of most people's minds. So to answer your question, like I'm in a much better place now than I was a year ago. Um, and there's good days and there's bad days, but I've kind of positioned myself and have set myself up with enough of a toolkit um, to have better days than not. And the connection back with family and friends and myself has really allowed me to feel that way, and it's been great. And so it was really sudden how I left the industry, and it was for me, it was by far the best job I've ever had in my life, working as a cook. I learned the most, I connected the most with people. It's just such a valuable life skill that never goes away, that you can, I have people over. This year has been an exception, but normally for Thanksgiving or Christmas, and I do all the cooking, I don't really let anyone cook with me in the kitchen. I'm very, I don't know. I'm a jerk about things like that. I just wanna control everything, I suppose. So, for me to have functions with 20, 30 people, I can do that in a flash because I've cooked for thousands of people in a day.
Yeah.
So it's such a it was such a great experience. And I felt like I was really making, some real headway in terms of my career as a cook, and like joining competitions and being a part of the CF, and getting to kind of network a little more, and meet some of the younger cooks that were kind of going to be coming up at the same time with me. So it was bittersweet leaving, to be honest with you, because I really enjoyed the industry and I really enjoyed working as a cook, but it just had to happen. And in like I say, like I think that might have been the last time we kind of communicated or talked, was when I did the cheese course,
Yeah.
the mozzarella one. And I think I just kind of I vanished from the culinary scene for months, and not a single person really knew what happened, because I was just I was kind of encapsulated in my own space. But now I've moved on, and like I said earlier, like I think I enjoy food now more than I did before. Like I read more, I'm creating, as much as I was before as well. So thank you for asking.
No problem. And I mean, if you're ever getting the itch to be in, the big kitchen playing with all the toys, you ever want to make hot sauce, I know a guy. So you've an open invitation to come play with some spicy food with me anytime I'm doing production, uh, because there's going to be a lot of that coming in the future. So
I
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah, I learned about mental health not from the culinary industry, and uh, I'm surprised. I'm not surprised at Chef Wilson's reaction, and I'm actually very happy that that was his reaction. Because I guarantee you, Chef Wilson from 20 years ago would not have had would not have had that response, and that just shows that the caliber of a chef that he is, that he was able to adapt over the years and understand the position that you're coming in, because there are a lot of a lot of chefs and cooks who it's like, suck it up, princess. Oh well.
Mhm.
Like, that conversation could have been like, okay, pack your knives, get out of my kitchen. So I'm really glad that was the reaction that you got. It sends a supportive message to someone who's having a hard time. But I learned about mental health in a previous life of when I was a music educator. So I used to be a classical musician. I played French horn. I went to the University of Western in Ontario, and I've always been like a very extroverted person. I've never had stage fright. I've always been really good at things, but for some reason, I decided to try to be a professional at one of the world's hardest instruments that I wasn't even that good at. And I discovered that when I'm not good at something, I have a lot of stage fright,
Mm.
and I have a lot of fear, um, and people are not kind. Um, I remember my first ever performance in front of all of my fellow students. It had been the first time anybody other than my teacher had heard me play. The first 26 bars of music were inaudible because I couldn't get the proper embouchure to produce sound. And I always look back as that being one of my most embarrassing moments of my life, standing in a room of 400 people, and that was their first impression of me. And through my 4 years at Western, I did get better. I got over my stage fright, but that impression of me stayed with people for that entire time. I was always this trash musician with a good heart, um, but it was devastating on my mental health, and it was actually my French horn teacher. His name's Derek Conrad, probably one of the greatest men I know aside from my father. And there's a mantra that he taught me when I was 20 years old that I still say to myself every single day, and that's, today was better than yesterday, but not as good as it'll be tomorrow.
Mm.
And it just tells me that no matter, even if today was awful, tomorrow is a new day. And they're into the same sort of speaking notes of that. There is a spoken word poet named Shane Coason, which is he is a BC native, um, and he has a spoken word poem that it's like instructions for a bad day. And I encourage anybody to listen to that. And he talks about that. Even if today was the worst day of your life, by tomorrow, today will have ended. And if yesterday was the worst day of your entire life, then there's only good. It will never get worse than that. So there's nothing you have to worry about. And then it's um, it puts you in a different space and a different perspective when you think about it like that. Like, and those sort of um, those two experiences really shaped how I handle myself with culinary, because you've talked about how busy. I haven't worked in the kitchen that has a chit reader in 6 years. I still wake up to that sound.
Yeah.
I, st- I remember cooking like 1,200 when I worked at Italian restaurants in Toronto as the pasta chef, cooking like 1,200 orders of pasta over a 6-hour period, finishing work, just feeling like I got ran over by a truck, taking off my skull cap, and my hair hurt. I haven't felt my hair hurt in so long. So like but I remember these feelings. And there's anytime I enter a restaurant, anytime I talk to someone in food service, I remember those feelings and how blessed I am to be in a position where I don't need to feel like that anymore.
Mhm.
But I've been through it, and I remember it vividly, and I don't think I'll ever forget that. And that's where I get my respect for all of those people that are still trudging it out, that's still here, that hear those chits. And I think everybody should work in customer service, at least for 1 year. It should be like a mandatory thing that everybody works in customer service, because until, especially for cooks, until you understand what it feels like to have your station literally on fire with a chit reader that is water falling over the other side, a whiteout of chits with a thick stack at the end, and you're just standing there wondering, like, is this over? Am I gonna? Can you kill me now?
Yeah.
I don't want to do I don't want to do this anymore. And then that feeling of relief when you take that last chit and you stab it down, and if you're me, you stab your finger down and bleed everywhere.
I
Um,
remember that.
and then people call you Jesus Christ after that because you impaled yourself. You know, hashtag union at the Empress.
Yeah.
But everybody should experience that at least once, because there's no you can tell someone in excruciating detail what that felt like, and they'll be like, "Yeah, I totally get it." They
Yeah.
don't. They don't. There's there's no way that someone can experience that. And I think everybody should at once, because then it would make people nicer to others. uh, because and I want to dial back to a comment you made before about the culinary industry being like misfits and outcasts and weirdos and the leftovers. um, and it's funny that you said that. I was in a pack meeting, which is like an educational meeting talking about the future of like course selection and teachings for the future culinary students. And I sat there and listened to someone who I greatly respect, who is in a very important educational chair position, say outright that the culinary trade is just the leftovers from all of the other trades for the people who couldn't make it.
Wow.
And I stood up, and I was like, I can't believe you just said that. Like, this mentality, like, like everything that's wrong with our industry is that we're sitting in a room with people from our industry talking about how nobody respects our industry, and then
Mm,
you talk about how the people coming in the industry are the leftovers,
mm,
are the misfits, are the scraps, are garbage.
mm.
And if that is your viewpoint as someone who is supposed to be a champion of our industry, how could you ever expect anybody else to have anything better of a view? And I feel like it needs to start with us, um, because n- nobody is ever going to respect the opinion of a group that doesn't even hold that opinion to its own merit. You gotta gut check your own community before you try to ask other people for help.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I think like when the that's troubling actually that that would be the case, that people look at, our industry or the industry that way, because my takeaway from having conversations with people who would ask me about being a cook, you have to learn so much, especially when you get to a level of being a chef. Like you're constantly learning, you're reading, your intelligence, your understanding of the food science, that is applicable, understanding how a potato works, and coming across any number of variety of potatoes and being like, I can apply these characteristics to this one and I know exactly what to do. Somebody just came in, when you have a million chits in front of you and somebody just came in with a nightmare list of allergies, and you've got to make something on the fly with new knives and a new board with new everything. So the intelligence factor, I think, that chefs have to have is completely overlooked, I think, and not understood, I think, on a grand scale. And I guess I should clarify in terms of misfits, when we talk about having a whiteout and bills tipping over the other side, um, in wanting to do that, I think it takes a certain kind of person. Um, Call it misfits, call it what you want, but it takes a certain kind of person to enjoy that element, to enjoy that environment, and to enjoy going through that process, and then cleaning up, and then waking up and wanting to do it all over again, day in and day out. And it takes a certain and a really special group of people to do that, because I think, there's, and you said it, they're the only people that understand that, or the people that have gone through it. It's like talking to an expecting parent and trying to inform them of all these things they're going to encounter, whereas there's no way that you can prepare them. They've just got to go through it to understand it and to really figure it out. And so cooking, I feel like, is one of those things, there's those same things as well. And you're right with the whole thing on, on customer service. I think it just comes down to a level of acknowledgement and appreciation. I think that we've kind of gone away from that. And you had mentioned earlier in a conversation, where you might be sitting at a dinner table with people who have positions in any number of facets in the economy, who make this amount of money compared to someone over here. And I think a lot of it has just gone to a place of social class, in terms of looking at people based on their revenue, or based on whether or not they live in a house, or whether they rent, or whatever the case might be. So I think we've, part of society has gotten away from appreciating each other and loving each other, because we're constantly competing with each other. We're trying to one up each other. We're trying to be better than the next person. Whereas everything would be a little easier if we carried everyone with us on our journeys rather than leave them behind. So that's probably another podcast for another day, but I'm glad we touched on that. I do want to just kind of bring it back to what we talked about at the top of the show, um, which is Island Chef Pepper Company. And again, kudos to you. Congratulations to everything that your company has created and the growth that it has seen. And it seems like it's just going to continue to go northward based on the conversation we had. I have added below here the links to your Facebook page, your Instagram, and also your website, so people can actively peruse your hot sauce and jelly supply. And then, do you want to quickly, before we go, just talk about the Christmas package that you have with Island Chef Pepper Company right now?
Yeah, sure. So what we've done is I've made miniature versions of all three of my pepper jellies and all six of my hot sauces in one tight little package. It's $60. We do shipping across Canada for free with that. You can order on the website. If it's local, it's $60. If it's on the website, it's 70. If you are local to Victoria, and it shows up as your address and you order on the website, I'll refund you that $10. No need to worry. If you are looking to get it shipped and you're wondering why you're getting gypped out of that $10 in savings, the honest answer is that it requires a special box. So, so it's just that's just what it is. It's what it is. In order to be able to ship it properly, it requires a special box. Um, in order to get it to you safely, so you can pass it on as a wonderful gift to any of your spice-loving family members or friends, that's just the cost. It's a lot cheaper than paying for shipping. Uh, but yeah, if you do have someone, I highly encourage you to go on. Most of the money that you spend on my hot sauce does go into the community to help out projects that I'm really passionate about. Um, and yeah, I want to use this moment to thank Steve for having me. It's been a hot minute since I've been able to sit down and just talk about some of the more pressing issues, or just in general, just have a good heartfelt conversation. So thank you, Steve.
I appreciate it, man. 100%. And thank you so much for taking your time out to do this. I know you're a busy, man. What is it, 11? I'm sure our kids will be up pretty soon. Uh, hopefully not. They might hear me. Um, Thank you again, Vince, for joining me today on the show, and for being able to kind of express your thoughts on the industry and to provide us with some information about your company. Really excited about that. And we'll look to do this again. Maybe we'll touch base in another 6 months, and we'll see how many more grocery stores you're in and how many new lines you have, and we'll have a look at maybe what the industry is doing at that point, because I think a lot of things are bound to continue to change.
I have one request for the next time that I'm on.
All right.
So next time that I'm on, I'm gonna give you the full line of hot sauces, and we're gonna do some taste testing. We're gonna have some chicken wings while we have the podcast.
I love that idea. We'll do our own hot ones, basically,
Yeah, with
right?
your own hot ones.
Yeah, that is awesome. I love it, man. I'm looking forward to that. Now we're gonna have to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right,
That's
thanks,
awesome.
Steve.
Thank you so much, man. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.